It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the 7th edition of the India Water Week, a 5-day conference on water with its overall theme as Water Security for Sustainable Development with Equity. Today we have our first technical session on decentralized solutions for water management. Our session co-chair, Ms. Archana Verma, Mission Director, National Water Mission. She has a vast and varied administrative experience in public governance, including management of rural, urban, local bodies, women empowerment, education at the grassroots level, and human resource management, and vigilance policy, also health and water policy at the highest level of policy making. Our session co-chair, Ms. Anu Garg, Additional Chief Secretary, VRD, Government of Orissa. At her present capacity, she has led several initiatives on water, use efficiency, and water conservation. Prior to her present assignment, she has served as a Principal Secretary, Department of Labor, Women and Child Development, Government of Orissa, and also worked under different capacities in various ministers and Government of India. Now, may I please request our session chair, Ms. Anu Garg, to please come up on the stage for her remarks. Can we have a huge round of applause?
So good morning. Good morning, everyone. My colleague, Special Secretary, Water Resources, Ms. Debashri Mukherjee, and my co-chair, Ms. Archana Verma, and all participants, panelists. I think the panelists can also sit here. Okay. So, friends, today's topic, I'm so happy to be part of it as now a very principal stakeholder in water resources, as the ACS of water resources in Odisha. I mean, I have realized how critical it is to talk about decentralized solutions to water management. And I mean, just for clarity, I am assuming water management as optimal, sustainable, equitable management of water, essentially. And when we are talking of water, we are going to be talking about groundwater, surface water, treated water, how that is to be managed, any water which we have been harvesting, irrigation water, industrial water. So basically, decentralized solutions to each of these categories of water. And I'm hoping that in today's discussion, some of our participants, panelists would be talking about that. I'm very happy that there is an IT organization which will be talking about some IT solutions also. So when we talk of decentralized solutions, first of all, there is community. And that's where, from my experience, I can tell you, in Orissa, we have a very vibrant network of Pani Panchayats. So the water user associations, we call them Pani Panchayats. And we have around 24,000 of these water user associations. And I would say that perhaps that is the best decentralized solution to water management for managing, for maintaining, and even maximizing the use of water in their respective domains. So that is one solution that we have. Then apart from that, lift irrigation and deep bore well. As all of you know, now bulk of the irrigation is through deep bore wells and lift irrigation points, which are individual based, and therefore more ownership is there. But how can we have better water management there? So we need to reach out to these people. And in Odisha, we have started training. So for small repairs, they were feeling handicapped. So they have this whole setup, but because of a small repair, feeling handicapped. So we have started training local youth with a tie-up with the ITIs, so that they can then just be there on call, and on a small payment, they can then help. So this is a small decentralized solution to a problem. And so this is one. Another is using the normal panchayats. So while we are using Pani Panchayats majorly, the panchayats also have a very huge role. In their respective areas, how can we ensure that the panchayats, the normal panchayats, the gram panchayats, how can they play a very major role? Maybe we can build in some systems of incentives as to how they have been able to manage their water resources better. The other category of decentralized participation could be youth. So youth, we have a campaign in our state called Youth for Water. We are doing this with UNICEF, in which we are taking youth to, and they have identified some traditional water bodies, which they are then trying to maintain, which they are trying to kind of see how climate is making an impact on that water body, basically sensitizing other youth. So how we can involve youth in water management, that is another thing which is there for all of you to think about. And a major constituent we are now planning to also include, we have been doing it in the past, is women. So we have this huge network of women self-help groups and how we can involve them. So just to give you an example, we have a scheme of urban wage employment. And there we are doing water harvesting structures only using the women self-help groups. We have made in this Jal Shakti Abhiyan 22,000 such water harvesting structures in our 114 local bodies. And this is entirely through women self-help groups. And the idea was to involve these local women, and also to sensitize them. The more they will get, they will participate, the more they will be able to sensitize their families, etc. So recently we had amendment to our Pani Panchayat Act. So in that what we did was that the Pani Panchayat member was the person who owned the land, basically was a member, traditionally. We said that henceforth, he and the spouse will be members. By doing so, we have included all the women of that Pani Panchayat area as members of the Pani Panchayat, hoping that their participation will help in women also getting more sensitized. The other solution, so this is community participation. The other solution I would feel is technological. And I'm not talking only of IT. I'm talking of other technologies which we need to think of. And I don't know too many, but some things which come to my mind are, can we have, for example, some technological solution whereby, like this duck-build structure for MIPs. So we have in a couple of places where we are able to have more storage of water. Or what is that called? Piano-ware style of kind of a anicut. Can we have that kind of a system? Will that be a better solution? Or in our state, we have also started, wherever we have bridges, we are also making barrages. Barrage cum bridge. And these are very low barrages so that the flood water can pass. But in after the rains, we can conserve a little bit of water. Is that a technological solution, or does it have other issues? So I'm leaving that as food for thought for you all to discuss. But there are several things which we need to, and then third level at which I feel we need some decentralized solutions are at the policy level. So at the policy level, there are so many policies which are there, so many schemes which are there. So I would like all of you to think, is there anything that we can do to kind of have a better outcome of these policies? One thing which comes to my mind is conjunctive use. So at all times, at least in our state, we have that if there is already a particular ayacut which is being attributed to, let's say, a major irrigation or a medium irrigation or a minor irrigation project, then in that area we do not allow any other water source, saying that it would be duplicating the I-cut. But conjunctive use is that near the canals where the groundwater is higher, why not use deep bore wells so that the water of the canal can go much further. And so we use 2-3 sources in a manner that we are able to maximize whatever water is there. So for efficient water management, is conjunctive use a possibility? That is something that we can talk about. Then water management at the implementation level. This we all grapple with, and maybe just like larger dams have proper boards or committees. For example, Narmada has a Narmada Control Authority and Bias board, and similarly for smaller dams, should we be having some kind of a monitoring committee which can not just look into how the dam water is being managed, but also maybe the catchment areas, how we can have plantations and also that there is less siltation, how we can maintain our source in a much better manner. The other thing is maintenance. And I feel that is an area which all of us neglect. We make a dam, we make an MIP, we make a deep bore well, and then we move ahead thinking of what more. But the maintenance itself is something which we need to focus on, involving again either the community or this monitoring committee, or what solutions can we come up with. So at a schematic level, I'm telling you that in our state we have this scheme called Navakrishna Chaudhary scheme, where we focus only on this, where we say that in case in a particular project you find that there is a possibility that some particular area, some canal is, let's say, getting defunct, that scheme is only to ensure that you are able to repair or take up that so that it comes back to its original I-cut. Building on that, it also has another component that if you think that there is a possibility that we can go beyond the I-cut, beyond the designed I-cut, then there also you can take. So in a particular project I had gone to, they told me that even though the designed I-cut is 9,000 hectares, we can take it to 12,000 hectares with the same water, only with this much investment. So that is a win-win situation, and perhaps that is where, you know, this is one of the decentralized solutions we can come up with to maximize whatever water has been conserved and utilize it properly. Another area which sometimes we all neglect is the command area of development, which is used to be a very prominent Government of India scheme. Then it was discontinued. Some states still have it. There used to be an ADM CADA in our times, 20, 30 years back, where that was the kind of importance that was given to reach the tail end. And somehow the scheme got discontinued, but it is a critical scheme to reach the tail end and to use our water efficiently. So just field drains, field channels, how those can be utilized, how those can be maintained, that is another area which I feel could contribute a lot. And then an IEC strategy. So we have been all talking about so many groups, so many farmers. How can we kind of reach out to them with the right messages? And that is something which engineering departments are not very good at. So I always say that in every engineering department, you have to go beyond engineering. And beyond engineering, you have to think of reaching out through IEC, through messages, through, and also being able to, being there for troubleshooting. So if somebody in a Pani Panchayat is having problems, let's say, in a deep bore well or in being able to maintain it or repair it, they should have a point where they can reach out. So in fact, very recently we started in one of our PSUs, state PSUs, the Orissa Lift Irrigation Corporation, we have set up a customer relation cell, just like private companies have, with a phone number, toll-free phone number, so that, and two people who are there to guide anybody who has a complaint. So our customers here are the farmers, and they, whenever they are ringing up, so that we are there for them to resolve the issues. So basically, trying to resolve basic issues which people may have. These are some of my original thoughts, friends. I am leaving this as food for thought, or let me put it, water for thought. And I would like all of you to dwell on it, think about some solutions, because I think given that we have 17% of the population of the world, only 4% of the water, and given the vagaries of the climate which you and I are experiencing in our own lifetime, we are seeing the difference in our own lifetime. Time has come when we have to use our water far more efficiently, and we need to seek out as many solutions as possible at various realms with various categories of people. And with that, I will now request that we start, and everybody may kindly stick to their respective time frames.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words. Now I request Mr. Shilp Verma, IWMI, to please come up on the stage for the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Before I start my presentation, while it's being loaded, let me just invite our esteemed panelists to come up here on the with the seats here to join the chair and co-chair. We have Shri Anand Kumar Agarwal from CGWB. Sir, would you please? We have Dr. Gyan Sundar, Senior Joint Commissioner from NHP. Professor Vivek Kumar from the Center of Rural Development and Technology, IIT Delhi. We have Shri Lalit Bajare from Innovative Water Technologies, Pune. We also have two participants who are joining virtually. Isha Zaveri from the World Bank, she's going to make a presentation after mine. And we also have Mr. Saurabh Deshpande, who will also join virtually. I also want to invite Manas Satpathy from Pradhan. And Himanshu Mishra from Social Alpha. So we have a very, very diverse panel, and I'm hoping that the discussions in this panel will basically lead us towards the solutions that the chair were talking about. In my 5-minute presentation, I am actually just going to add another dimension to what the chair just talked about. On the, I am Shilp Verma, I work with the International Water Management Institute, and my mandate is to work on the nexus between water, energy and food policies. So I'm going to add that dimension on how energy access can actually facilitate water access and water control, which is critical to delivering Har Khet Ko Pani, which is an ambitious Government of India initiative under PM-KSY. I'm just giving this data. I think most of you understand this better than I do. If you look at what has happened to the irrigation economy in the country after 1990, almost all the new irrigated area that has been added, that is attributable to groundwater expansion. I think the chair was also referring to this. There is a lot of irrigation now happening through bore wells, dug wells, and pumps become critical when the groundwater economy starts dominating. In fact, India is the world's largest user of groundwater. We have, there are different estimates, but anywhere between 20 and 30 million wells and tube wells. And I'm going to show in this chart, each of these red dots represents 5,000 such structures. And this data is already almost 10 years old. This is from the minor irrigation census, which has a reference year of 2013-14. So it's all over. And EMI has argued that basically this minor irrigation economy, which is part of the decentralized solutions, is actually responsible for much of the green revolution gains that we have seen in the country. It has also democratized access to irrigation. So irrigation is not only limited to the command area of irrigation systems, but it has gone much beyond that. Many of the hydrologists and hydrogeologists had actually argued that in much of peninsular India, which is drier part of India, we cannot have a lot of irrigation, but the groundwater economy has proved that wrong, even though it has in some cases gone beyond its limits. The second map shows what we call the energy divide of India. The red parts of this map are where the wells and tube wells are more than 80% of them run on electricity. And most of this is subsidized electricity or free power that is given by the government to farmers. Our annual farm power subsidy bill is anywhere between 15 and 20 billion US dollars. So that's the money that the government is spending through state governments on subsidizing irrigation access. But the yellow parts represent where less than 20% of the wells are energized through the grid. And they are all dependent on either manual pumping or diesel-based pumping, which is very expensive and it's also much more polluting. So this is the kind of two sides of the coin within the same country. Interestingly, the western and peninsular part is also the water scarce part, which is experiencing groundwater depletion. But eastern India has much more natural endowment of water, but because of the high cost of irrigation, there is under irrigation and lower productivity of crops. I already mentioned this. India is the world's largest. In fact, India uses more groundwater than the next two countries, which is United States and China combined. So, and that has caused these depletion pockets. Now, we did some work when PMKSY was announced. We were quite excited by the idea of the government taking up the mission of delivering Har Khet Ko Pani. And we thought if we have to do that, then we must first identify which are the geographies in India which are irrigation deprived historically. And we identified 112 districts which are the most irrigation deprived districts where on average less than 30% of the farms have any access to irrigation. So that's where we thought that PMKSY should focus on, and both the states on which we want to focus today in this session, Orissa and MP, are significantly represented in this most irrigation deprived geography. There is also a social side of this. Within this geography, it's the tribal communities which are deprived, much more than the non-tribal communities, and that's another aspect on which I hope we can discuss today. Now, in Madhya Pradesh and in Odisha, there have been significant efforts and successes as well in expanding irrigation access. Between 2009 and 2014, we did some analysis. Madhya Pradesh increased its irrigated area significantly. Part of this was through techno-economic reforms, but also institutional reforms in the irrigation sector. There was large-scale desilting of canals undertaken to improve the flow of water to the farms. There was improvement in the canal management protocol. There were enhanced monitoring and investments in delivering water to the last mile. But there was also some very interesting energy policies, I think, which often go unreported. Madhya Pradesh started a program of issuing short-term seasonal temporary connections for irrigation, which were basically 90-day connections which were available to farmers on a prepaid basis, which is unheard of. Most farmers in India don't pay for energy, but here we have, we had farmers prepaying for energy access through these short-term connections, and we feel that had a major impact or contribution to expanding the irrigated area, as has been shown in several studies. Similarly, in Odisha, there have been significant efforts. The last minor irrigation census shows that most of the irrigation economy in Odisha is dependent on diesel or on manual power. But in the last few years, there has been significant expansion in farm power supply. This data is already old. Now I hear recently that even double of what is shown in this graph is actually now the farm power supply. So that would have significant livelihood impacts, and we need to find more ways of doing that. At the same time, there is another parallel opportunity that is now available of solar irrigation, which is becoming popular, and there is a big government focus on expanding solarization of agriculture. There have been some studies that EMI has been involved in, which has shown that even though solar pumps have been installed, their utilization is low. and we need to find ways of improving that. But solar pumps, basically for Eastern India, can offer significant opportunities for reliable and affordable irrigation access, even to smallholder farmers. Now, I want to leave or end with a few discussion points or questions which I hope that some of the panelists can address. We want to discuss how can states leverage PM-KSY, the Krishi Sinchai Yojana, as well as PM Kusum, the agri-solarization program. Both are very ambitious programs to deliver reliable and affordable water and energy access to every farm. How can expansion of farm power supply and solar irrigation be synchronized? We don't want to keep investing in improved farm power as well as at the same time bring in solar pumps and have both of these basically create over-capitalization and underutilization. So we need both these policies to work in sync with each other. How can productive uses of decentralized renewable energy, and some of our partners from the civil society will talk about this, can help optimize investments within the larger ecosystem of agriculture production clusters? And finally, what are the key innovative ideas and approaches that both Odisha and Madhya Pradesh are keen to test, or that have been tested but we are now ready to scale for delivering water and energy access for doubling farmers' income? So I'll close with that, and I hope that this discussion will address some of these questions. We'll now have a presentation from Isha, who is joining us online.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me and see the slides as well.
Hi, Isha. We can't see you right now, but we can definitely hear you. 1 second, we're just checking for the camera. Hello. Hi, Isha. So your presentation is on screen and everyone can hear you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Isha Zaveri. I'm a senior economist at the World Bank. But today I'm presenting as an affiliate scholar of Stanford University, where I did my postdoctoral fellowship before joining the bank. So I want to put the caveat that all the findings and conclusions that I expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of the World Bank. This work I'm presenting is a paper I was working on as a student with my co-authors here, Shoumitro Chatterjee, who is currently an assistant professor at Johns Hopkins University in the United States, Rohit Lamba, who is at Pennsylvania State University, and myself. Currently, as I said, I'm an affiliate scholar at Stanford. And here we wanted to look at the role of farm subsidies in changing India's water footprint. So it's my great pleasure and great honor to be here and present this to all of you, and I want to convey my thanks to Shilp for inviting me. So let me just give a broad overview of why we wanted to study this. One is that governments around the world provide broad types of levels of support to agriculture. About $600 billion are provided annually to support agricultural production and food consumption worldwide. And a large part of that, around 70%, consists of support for agricultural producers. A majority of this support, in turn, is provided through measures that are considered distorting, in the sense that prices get distorted. And so, given the magnitude of resources that are devoted to agricultural subsidies across the world, we wanted to understand what were some of the unintended consequences on environmental outcomes, because that would be very critical to understand for policymakers to design sustainable, fair, and efficient agricultural policies going forward. In India, of course, there are a fulcrum of farming practices that uh, on which the state subsidies influence. So these can broadly be classified into two. Of course, the input subsidies like free electricity, high yield seeds, fertilizer, as well as output subsidies, which are guaranteed um, procurement at set prices. And these subsidies can influence crop choices and farming practices. And of course, most of them are well intentioned, but the externalities that they have come to impose on the environment often can get ignored in policy design. And so we wanted to explore the nature and extent of these externalities in the study. And developing countries like India in particular, of course, they are also facing a greater burden on freshwater reserves. Higher population also implies a greater rate of water use. And India, as Shilp already mentioned, has witnessed a 500% increase in groundwater consumption over the past half century. And so the question we wanted to ask is that, is this in spite of or because of some of the agricultural, well intentioned but perhaps distorted agricultural policies? So that's where this paper comes in, where we wanted to understand the role of farm subsidies in changing India's water footprint. And we specifically wanted to do focus on the role of output subsidies. And these, of course, guarantee purchase of crops at floor prices. They are intended to protect or raise farm incomes and food production for the consumer. But the role of output subsidies themselves in driving local water use has not been quantified um, yet. I mean, it's anecdotally well known. There has been some work that has focused on the role of input subsidies like free power, but the role of output subsidies and just quantifying the impact on water use has not been done so far. And this is primarily for two reasons, really, because one is that output subsidies affect groundwater indirectly. So the driving mechanisms are a little subtle. Because they shape crop choice decisions, unlike power subsidies that can directly increase groundwater extraction using pumps. And the second is because there is not enough data across a very large span of time so that we can actually see these changes once the policy is put in place. And I'll talk about that a little further. So in general, of course, we know that every year before the sowing season, the MSP is announced for 23 crops across 7 commodities. But the most important thing is that this MSP has to be backed by actual procurement by agencies. And this latter machinery really acts as the true determinant of the efficacy of the policy. So the MSP does not have any bite unless it is backed by procurement. And in practice, the policy gets implemented primarily for rice and wheat, the main crops, and sugarcane as well. And all of these three are, of course, irrigation and water intensive crops. So here what you see on the chart is showing you, as a result of these policies, there has been surplus stock and overproduction of rice and wheat over time. So in panel A, you see the surplus stock. Surplus stock is calculated as the excess stock over the norms set for strategic reserves. And the black line is showing you the ratio between the total stock of rice and wheat um, over the government and buffer norms. And what you see is that in 2020 alone, the government reserves were nearly 2.5 times the required norms. And in the graph on the right, you see that this production of rice and wheat has in general exceeded consumption over time. And in 2020, although the graph ends in 2018, but in 2020, this trend continues. And we found that this production actually of rice and wheat exceeded consumption by 30%. So a large part of this also gets wasted, and the associated cost on groundwater then becomes a dead weight loss. So one of the key reasons, therefore, behind the groundwater stress is this overproduction of water intensive crops like rice and wheat. And what you see on the graph on the left now, which is showing you the plot, it's basically telling you that with an increase in the rate of growth in area under rice cultivation between 1996 and 2015, there is an associated increase in the wells, the active wells becoming defunct. And this is, of course, not surprising given that rice is also one of the most water intensive crops and oftentimes gets cultivated using flood irrigation techniques. What we wanted to do is quantify the role of this MSP and public procurement on groundwater, but this is very challenging because actually identifying the underlying mechanism has been very hard. We don't have enough variation over space. The MSP is a national policy, it only varies over time. The impacts on water are also cumulative, over time, small changes add up. And so we needed data on groundwater stress and procurement from the initial period when the policy began, when procurement actually began over a very long-term horizon. And so for in the approach that we take in the paper is we focused on two states for which we were able to collect the data in different but relevant time periods when the policy was instituted. So in Punjab as well as in Madhya Pradesh. These two states also have very distinct aquifer systems. We know this also matters a lot in terms of how pumping affects the water table locally. And we assembled a novel data set to be able to actually analyze these impacts. So I'll just very quickly go over this, that this is a tale of five figures for Punjab over time. Panel A on the top left is showing you that groundwater depth has basically increased over time from 1973 to 2016, um, from 4.82 meters below groundwater level to more than 14 meters below groundwater level. Um, and the historical root for this lies in the adoption of these high yielding variety wheat and rice during the Green Revolution in the 1960s. And then what you see on the graphs below, panels C and D, is that oftentimes what happened is that these high yield varieties replaced local wheat varieties as well as cotton, maize, oilseeds. Uh, and these high yield varieties also required more intensive irrigation. And that increased irrigation that you see in panel B came largely from groundwater. So you see this exponential increase in groundwater
Hello.
from broad duct wells and tube wells. And that led
Hi,
to
Isha. Sorry to interrupt you in between. We are running out of time, and I request you to please wrap up.
Sure. So I'll just go to the next slide and wrap up. Thanks. So this is what we show. We show that these effects of producing and procurement of rice, for example, had these cumulative impacts on groundwater depth in Punjab. And we find that procurement of rice, for instance, explained almost 60% of the fall in groundwater levels between 1981 and 2003. What you're seeing in this figure is basically showing you the effects on the groundwater table depths over time. And this gradual adjustment is an important finding, and it's worth emphasizing because if one ignores this adjustment process, you could underestimate the effects of the subsidy on groundwater declines by almost 90%. So let me end here and just point out that we found similar effects in Madhya Pradesh, but of course the context is very different. The policy shift happened very recently in the past from 2008 onwards, but we see similar effects there as well. And so let me go to perhaps the last slide and just say that uh, compared to total agricultural subsidies that account for 2 to 2.5% of GDP, oftentimes the expenditure on public goods like agricultural research and infrastructure is negligible. And perhaps we need to rethink how we are providing subsidies to both farmers as well as consumers so that we can secure our own water future. So let me end there. Thanks.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much,
thanks,
Isha,
Isha.
for
Thank you so much. My request to all the panelists is that we'll have to restrict it since we have to end at 11:20, I think. And so, and we are six panelists. So my request is 5 minutes each, and that can be monitored.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So as ma'am said, I would like all the panelists to please stick to the time. You will get 5 minutes each. So now I request our first presenter, Dr. D. Gyanan Sundar, Senior Joint Commissioner, NHP, MOGS, to please come up on the stage for the presentation. Can we have a huge round of applause for Mrs. Sundar?
Good morning and respectful good morning wishes to Special Secretary Ma'am, Chair, Co-Chair and all the participant delegates. Keeping in mind the time restriction, I will like to restrict by 5 minutes. But quickly, I would like to just put a point to the audience here as a thought. It's not a food for thought, a morning thought. Like in our country, the previous speakers have mentioned and have put more emphasis on the importance of groundwater and how it has enabled for the food production. That's what you have seen. It means rough around 40 to 45 millions of tube wells exist in our country in the form of tube wells, bore wells and dug wells. And all these tube wells, 99% of these tube wells are being owned by the farmers or the public. And now at the central level, a policy being framed to translate, educate and make the farmers or the public to understand in a way they change a system such that it doesn't affect the food production, it doesn't affect the withdrawal of groundwater, because one side there's a decline in groundwater level, other side to suit the growing population exponentially there should have been a food production. Therefore, both has to be in balance. So therefore, a policy should be framed in such a way that a farmer understands what is happening in this country. I had an opportunity of visiting Gujarat. Maybe I can slip to the next slide. Yeah. I'll quickly put the points which is field oriented, which will be much useful for our audience. It was in a place called Mangrol Chorwad, where 20 years before it was a fresh water, and then in a gradual phase of time, this I'm talking which happened before 20 years, it became brackish. The panchayat, they had their own wisdom, got the order from the engineers over there to mechanize the dug well in a way that the village women need not come to the place. The bore well is mechanized, the dug well is mechanized, they have an overhead tank and they were getting supply of water. On a course of time, these women who used to gather to that place understood on an account of pumping for a day, the groundwater becomes saline at the end of the day. It means there is a top fresh water, below there is a brackish water. So fortunately I visited that place. The women group gathered and said, "Sir, kindly ask the panchayat officials to remove the mechanized one, and we know how to withdraw water and how much, in a way that there shall be a balance of fresh water in monsoon as well as during the non-monsoon periods." So it struck me. I talked to the person and said, please better remove it, because their wisdom is equally important to understand the dynamics of groundwater there, because they live every day there. And believe it or not, the mechanized borewell was removed. I mean, the pump was removed, and they are managing their water accordingly. The point which I like to stress at morning hour is, approach the people, as ma'am said, engineers, scientists or geologists, approach the people. We think that we have done something, but let us get their point, and I'm sure that point will be a very good solution, because they are the water managers. So quickly I would like to stress on few points. I had mentioned not as decentralized solution for water resource management. I had purposely put as decentralization. It is a process. It's not that we create some policy and that is done. There's always a scope for us to change, introspect, only based on the community participation, their experience, their wisdom. It should be at least to 40 to 50% plus of 30% of technology and 10% of policy at the higher level. I think this deadly combination will make some sort of viable implementation at the grassroots level. So with this, that's what I had mentioned it. We need to make public quite serious to involve themselves in community participation. So this key issues are well known. I want to stick on to this. Every state, every region has a history of water supply, traditionally. So our policy, our methodology, when we approach the village community, should be in coincidence that what is happening there for thousands of years. So we should not force them to adopt some technology, be it an innovative or advanced technology, in a way that forget the traditional system of water management. So the point which I would like to mention, which is known to the panel and the audience, is let us go in time which suits to the community for the betterment and management of water, both surface and groundwater source in this country. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. Next up, I invite Professor Vivek Kumar, Center of Rural Development and Technology, IIT Delhi, to please come up on the stage for his presentation.
Thank you. First of all, my big thanks to the Ministry of Jal Shakti for inviting me here. Can I have the presentation? The perspective today I'm going to present here is the circular economy approach and wastewater treatment. So in 2019, Niti Aayog came up with some data, and data suggests that in India we are just treating 70% of the wastewater, and if we look at the water stressed districts, there are more than 270, and the population is around 60 crore people are feeling water stressed in this country, and more than 82 crores they are having water accessibility less than 1000 meter cube per annum. So with this background, if we talk about the circular approach on wastewater treatment, that is treating wastewater and then reusing it. So we can go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, I have this slide. So quickly I'll go, this is the slide taken from IWMI only. So it talks about the circular approach where we are talking about economy, we are talking about health impact, social impact, and then the competition. So where we are not only talking about creation of job opportunities, sanitation management, improved food security, and then enhancement of the natural capital, etc. We are actually now redefining the whole strategy of 3R and the treatment systems. So earlier we used to say, when we used to say 3R, it was reduce, reuse and recycle. So now we have added, because we are talking about circular economy, so we have added another R as recharge. So recently IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi and IIT Roorkee, we were working with some industries, and we found that these industries in a particular cluster, they are treating water up to a very good quality. So maybe that can be, you know, segregated, stored in the pond, and then we can think of recharge. So now reduce, reuse or recycle and recharge. And as far as treatment is concerned, now there is a focus on decentralized. We are talking about decentralization. So in decentralized treatment and the centralized. Decentralized, again, we can go for ex situ and in situ. So in situ, for example, in Delhi recently we have started, so there is a drain, push wear drain, where, so this is the old actually. I have to go quickly on this. Right, so this decentralized treatment system, now we are focusing on drain treatment, and there we can have again a strategy what to achieve, like what is the objective of the treatment. So whether the drain is directly going to the drinking water source, then we have other standards. Otherwise, when we talk about the drain treatment, we can have standards where we can control odor, we can control aesthetics, or we can, work on aesthetics, etc. Right, but when we talk about the reuse and recycle, one of the sector where this treated water is being proposed to use in irrigation, and that is what I would like to highlight to the audience. So there are a lot of challenges when we talk about the irrigation. So those challenges we need to address, and as a policy makers, when we are going for this kind of proposal, then we have to think of what are the challenges with this treated water irrigation. So there are risks related to health risk, environmental risk related to soil, crop, public health, and the groundwater sources. So when we are talking about these risks, this is the pathway. I need not to explain this because there is a time scarcity. I would like to go to the slide. Right, so this one. So when we talk about this reuse of treated wastewater for irrigation, we should adopt a strategy where we look at this this treated water in 3 different segments. So one where this water is being reused for agriculture, the food crops. So there has to be different standard for that. Because these food crops will be used for direct human consumption. Then there are food crops which are going to be processed. So there can be different standards for this kind, because in this case crops will be processed. So you have a chance, because in the first case there will be direct consumption. In the second case there will be processing, so you have chance for kind of remediation. And the third, where you are talking about non-food crops, so there you can have little more relaxed standards. And besides this, I just like to highlight just one point, because we need to think right. So if you look at the exposure pathway, there is a possibility of direct exposure to the farmer and farmer family. So that again we need to think of. During the COVID time, actually there was a consortium working on the possibility of contamination of this sewage wastewater with this virus. So during that time, then this pathway is also very important. So this is just for the policy makers to think on different standards, and of course academic institutions are working on these things. Yeah. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kumar. Next up, we have Mr. Saurabh Deshpande, Process Engineer, Black and Vyaj, who will be joining us virtually. Hello. Hi, Mr. Saurabh. I hope you can hear us. Hello. Okay, so I would like to invite Mr. Lalit Bajare, CTO, Innovative Water Technologies Private Limited, Pune, and we'll continue with Mr. Saurabh in few minutes. Thank you.
This way. Yeah. This is okay. So my presentation will be loaded.
Yeah, good morning everybody. I'm Lalit Bajare from Innovative Water Technologies. We hold a technology which actually gives solution to whatever we are talking about, decentralization. We want to treat wastewater at source, and we believe that when each one of us looks wastewater as a source, as a water source, then we will be we will be making a huge progress in water conservation and water sufficiency in India. So everybody has touched upon the necessity on wastewater recycle, but here we are presenting one solution which is empaneled with the Jal Shakti Ministry and which is developed through through 7 years of rigorous experiments and research work on ground level, that is in villages, in towns and in cities. We believe even if we have tens of centralized wastewater treatment plants in urban areas, we need decentralized wastewater plants there as well. And if you talk about taluka level, panchayat levels and villages, then the need is much more. So looking at the time constraint, I will not touch upon the regular whatever issues, but these are the challenges what the local government body faces. If we have to go with centralized solutions which are prevailing till today, then we need to have sewerage networks, we need to have huge lands available, we need to have large powers, electrical powers, and then we need to have huge capital at one go. These are all the challenges. And even if we treat this wastewater at a central plant, then we need more energy again to recycle it back and reuse it. So what we intend to do here, or what we emphasize here is, we must go and recycle and reuse wastewater at source. So this is again what has led us to do all these experimentations. These are all the local body government challenges, that you don't have land, you don't have power, you don't have funds at one go. So this is where the decentralization comes in picture. We are thankful to the Jal Shakti Ministry, which initiated a move to identify innovative technologies 2 years back, and these were the steps taken by them. And Niti Aayog, NIRI, IIT, DRDO, everyone were involved in analyzing it. And this is how we have developed this technology, what we call it as EBBITEC. This is the empanelment letter which ministry has given us. And now these are the solutions. So here we have installed the plants in towns, in urban areas, as well as in the rural areas. The catch here is looking at the rural needs or Indian condition needs. We have worked at sites and developed this technology. So technology was complemented by engineering, wherein up to 40 KLD plant capacities, we need only single phase power supply, which is readily available in villages. So if we go with 3-phase power, then again that challenge is a different one. So we have installed all these units on the public toilets, as well as the schools, colleges, and schools, colleges, bus stops, railway stations. And if someone asks where do you see an opportunity, then yes, wherever there is wastewater, we see an opportunity. So we again are trying to emphasize that we must recycle and reuse wastewater at source. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have Mr. Saurabh Deshpande, Process Engineer, Black and Watch, joining us virtually.
Sorry, like my mic was on mute, so I was not able to join before. Like I'm sharing my screen. Let me know like if you guys see it.
Hi, sir. We can see you now. You can share your screen, and you will have exactly 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I will just go quickly over the slides that I had. Like, this presentation was for the for like understanding like how the decentralized systems would benefit areas which have lack of water infrastructure, or communities which are remotely located, or some rural communities which don't have water structure right now, but um, they have a lot of residents over there. So I will just quickly go through the like the case studies that I have. In this, like I had seen like 2 to 3 case studies. One is outside of India, one is within India. This case study is for a small county in Virginia, where it's like a 182 houses community, and they were not able to treat their water properly because they had like unreliable infrastructure for transferring the water from the septic tanks at homes to the central facility. It was decided by the community to have a community fund and use a decentralized system in which they will treat the uh, wastewater produced at the source and then reuse it for non-potable purposes. Um, this system they were able to build in 18 months, and they were able to install with little funding from community, and they didn't have to go to any government or centralized system to the government or centralized system didn't have to invest like millions in this project. Similarly, a case study was done in Bangalore, where a rural area near to Bangalore, they had the septic tanks in their houses, and this system was developed by an NGO called Boda. They In this system, they collect all the fecal sludge from all the communities and then bring it to a single place, where it is treated by using an anaerobic digester, and the biogas which is released is can be reused by the residents for cooking. And this is all a gravity based system, so it doesn't require any energy or electricity, and the solids which are produced, they can be resold after treatment as biosolids, as fertilizers for the farmers. uh, in conclusion, I just want to conclude, like in India, like there are many rural communities which do not have distribution networks, or like there are farms where they are not connected to a centralized wastewater treatment facility. So many have single septic tanks at their places. So instead of just using a septic tank, like multiple small communities can come together and collect the funds and install a decentralized system, which will also require less energy and less investment compared to a full centralized treatment system. And this will also provide benefits to the small community in the form of the water can be reused for non-potable uses like irrigation, and also the biogas can be reused for heating and other purposes. Uh, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Saurabh, for keeping it short and crisp. Now I invite Mr. Shilp Verma to please moderate the panel discussion ahead. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. We have 3 more panelists, and thankfully they are not making presentations, but I'm going to ask them very difficult questions, and I hope that will generate some discussion. I'll start with Sri Anand Kumar Agarwal from the Central Groundwater Board. Sir, you've heard so much about the possibilities of groundwater development as well as using wastewater for recharging groundwater. Now, if I remember correctly, there was a new component of PMKSY focused on groundwater that was added. So I was wondering if you could reflect on how groundwater can act as a decentralized solution for improved water management. Sir. Sure.
थैंक यू ऑर्गेनाइजिंग कमेटी जो मुझे बुलाया और कहने का एक अवसर दिया। सर, ये डिसेंट्रलाइज जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम और जो सॉल्यूशन है पानी की उपलब्धता को तो एश्योर करेगा लॉन्गर पीरियड के लिए उस क्षेत्रों में जहाँ वाटर सेट छोटे हों, और जहाँ जैसे बिहार जैसे राज्य जहाँ से मैं काफ़ी लंबी सर्विस करके यहाँ आया, एक्यूफर हाईली पोटेंशियल्स हैं और रीजनली एक्सटेंसिव हैं और वाटर शेड रन्स इनटू थाउजेंड्स ऑफ किलोमीटर। वहाँ आप खोजेंगे कि पानी पंचायत या वाटर कोई कम्युनिटी ऐसा है जो मॉनिटर करे, नहीं है, क्योंकि वहाँ ओनरशिप इज़ द मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग। गवर्नमेंट ने भी बढ़ावा दिया थ्रू मिलियन सैलो ट्यूबवेल, गवर्नमेंट ने फिर बढ़ावा दिया चीफ मिनिस्टर के के नाम पर जो सब्सिडी और ट्यूबवेल बेस्ड है। सो इस फोरम से हमें पहले वो भी सोचना, अच्छा उन सभी जगहों पर डिक्लाइन भी हो रहा है, धीरे धीरे हो रहा है, लेकिन हो रहा है, पानी की उपलब्धता घट रही है, खास करके गांगे क्षेत्र में। गांगे से हट करके बिहार जैसे राज्य में जहाँ पठारी इलाका है या एलुवियम का थिकनेस कम है, वहाँ तो इश्यूज काफ़ी गंभीर हो गए। आप बिलीव नहीं करेंगे कि गया जैसे शहर में जिसका केवल एक समय में 3 लाख पॉपुलेशन था, उसके पेयजलापूर्ति के लिए गंगा से 100 किलोमीटर दूर से पानी लाया जा रहा है। एक्यूफर हैज़ ड्राइड अप। सो डिसेंट्रलाइज सोल्यूशन में हमें फिर एक ऐसे सोल्यूशंस के बारे में भी सोचना पड़ेगा कि सी द डाइकोटोमी है, एक तरफ काफ़ी पानी है, एक आधा क्षेत्र जो है पानी से सूखा है। दूसरा चीज़ है कि एग्रीकल्चर जो बेसिक पानी को यूज करता है, काफ़ी ज़्यादा पानी को यूज करता है, हमने सेंट्रल ग्राउंड वाटर अथॉरिटी में उन्हें एग्जम्प्ट किया, और सब्सिक्वेंटली जितनी भी स्टेट अथॉरिटीज़ हैं, इवन कोई रेगुलेशन की बात तो छोड़ दीजिए, इवन देयर इजंट एनी क्वांटिफिकेशन हाउ मच दे आर यूजिंग। माई एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ रूरल बिहार इज़ दैट कि जब कुसुम आया, PM कुसुम आया, तो जब तक सूरज की किरण है ट्यूबवेल चल रहा है, जब पावर सब्सिडी खत्म हो गई, जब तक पावर आया, शॉर्ट पावर आया, जब तक बिजली है ट्यूबवेल चल रहे हैं। स्टेट गवर्नमेंट उस पर ध्यान दे रही है, लेकिन जो डिसेंट्रलाइज सोल्यूशन अगर एकदम हम दे दें विदाउट एनी गवर्नमेंट कंट्रोल, सो इट हैज़ टू बी एन ओवर आर्चिंग, दोनों चीज़ है। तीसरी चीज़ आपको सर कहना चाहेंगे कि कैसे इसको पूरे फोल्ड में लाएंगे। हम अभी केवल 17 जगहों पर रेगुलेशन, सिर्फ 16 जगहों पर रेगुलेशन एंड कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं, और बाकी सब स्टेट, यूनियन टेरिटरीज, आइलैंड्स अपने रेगुलेशन एंड कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं। हम उन सभी का अब अध्ययन करते हैं, वो सभी जो है मे बी बिकॉज इकोनॉमी जो है ड्राइव करता है, ग्राउंड वाटर इकोनॉमी को ड्राइव करता है, तो वो इट्स नॉट दैट स्ट्रिक्ट। सो अभी खास करके 24/9/2020 में जब गाइडलाइंस आई, तब पंजाब और हरियाणा ने काफ़ी स्ट्रिक्ट गाइडलाइंस बनाए। सो अंत में हम इतना ही कहना चाहेंगे कि डिसेंट्रलाइज सॉल्यूशन जो है स्पेशली पानी की उपलब्धता को समय, मतलब विद टाइम पानी की उपलब्धता को बढ़ाए रखने में मदद करेगा, लेकिन देयर हैज़ टू बी समहाउ गवर्नमेंट, कुछ तो आप एकदम हम दे देंगे, फिर उनको समझदारी कितनी है। और ख़ास करके बिहार जैसे या ब्रह्मपुत्र वैली चाहे बंगाल है, चाहे उड़ीसा का जो एलुवियल एरिया है, वहाँ पर फिर सर दिक्कत होगी। इन्हीं दो शब्दों के साथ फिर मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा कि मुझे यहाँ बुलाया गया कहने के लिए। थैंक यू।
Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to invite Manas from Pradhan. Pradhan has been working in this field for, I think, 40, 50 years. So just for him to share the experiences of Pradhan from Orissa and MP specifically.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Silp, for including me in this session. Yeah, so to briefly share about our experience, a lot is already talked about centralized system. Even though they have contributed significantly in increasing food grain production in the country, the benefits are not equitable. That is very clear. There are significant areas, as was shown by Silp in the map. Central India tribal belt mainly has not benefited by such huge centralized systems, because neither the technologies promoted under centralized system are viable and feasible in these areas, because they don't have huge surface water sources or groundwater sources. What they have is high rainfall. So this is also a surprise that high rainfall areas have less areas under irrigation in India in comparison to states like Gujarat, Rajasthan, where rainfall is less but irrigation coverage is more. So certainly what is going on is not right for these regions, and new things have to be promoted. And for that, decentralized water management has to be promoted, so that people can promote the technologies they are used to promote traditionally for so many years, and how technology can help them to be more efficient and access that. That is where we focused, and we have developed technologies by working with the people in this Central India tribal belt, mainly small ponds. So it is not capital technology or skill intensive. It is people manage, they have the technology, only it has to be integrated, people have to be brought together, and those have to be promoted under various governments. So we have leveraged MGNREGA to promote integrated land and water resource development in the tribal area. So community, they come together, they plan integrated water resource development for their area and get it approved in the Gram Sabha and implement it under MGNREGA, so that everyone, at least the people having lands, have access to water bodies and are also jointly deciding about the crops which can be taken up with the available water, not going for very high consuming water consuming crops. So they also set systems not only to develop water resources but also to use the available water, and it complements other initiatives downstream. If you do run rainwater harvesting in the upland regions in scale, then it benefits this, it reduces siltation in the reservoir, it helps groundwater recharge, so it complements. But generally, when in the tribal area, the irrigation coverage is within less than 10% today. So what we have seen, actually, Xavier Institute of Management did an evaluation of this work that we have done in Odisha, Western Odisha. Their migration, to reduce migration, this initiative was taken, and we were involved in that initiative to anchor it. So around 30 NGOs got involved, and we in 20 blocks we did this, and the impact results, the XIMU says that 60%, earlier 28% of the resources, MGNREGA resources, were getting used for land and water resource development. Now it was 77%. And 60% of the communities, they said that they have assets to access water and improve their farming. And 56.7% said they have earned more, so now they will not migrate. So it's a significant impact. So what I see, that as a result of all these efforts, that it is highly cost effective, it is inclusive, most of the farmers having lands got assets, it is sustainable because they have it in their land and they manage it, and overall it is quite impactful because they have earned income, and which will stop migration, distress migration to distant pockets. And it doesn't need much energy because they are shallow water, so they can manually also lift, or small pump sets can at best be used. So that is the experience that we have, and we have scaled it up now in Chhattisgarh and West Bengal with government under MGNREGA, and covered a large number of villages. Thank you.
Thanks, Manas. Let me now invite Himanshu. Himanshu is representing Social Alpha, but he's also wearing the dual cap of Cine and Sustain Plus, and I hope he can share the experiences specifically of decentralized renewable energy solutions.
Yes, thank you, Shilp, for this opportunity. And I was taking a lot of notes from what I was hearing from the other panelists. So there are some so I'll try to be really brief here. A lot has been already covered. And what I'll try to represent is that a few points that I observed from some of the panelists was the smallest of farmers and the farms in general are the largest consumer of agricultural water. So the needs of the farms also need to be brought into the room, and that is what I'll try to do in the next couple of minutes. What does a small farmer need? They need, traditionally, as Dr. Gnansundar also indicated, that water is a traditional resource, and traditionally farms have always strived for efficiency, whether it was energy efficiency, whether it was water efficiency, or whether it was just consumption efficiency. And those are the needs exactly. Small farms and marginal farmers need energy efficient ways to apply water to their farms. Even if the public infrastructure brings the water right to like 200 meters away from their farm, they need ways that are very energy efficient to bring it to their farm. That's need number one. The second need that they have is they also want to use water effectively. They do not want to keep irrigating multiple times and spend the drudgery and the energy around it. They want efficient ways to retain that water in the soil and technologies that could help there. And also, very, very importantly, small farmers and marginal farmers also realize that water as a resource is something that cannot be exploited and depleted beyond a point. So they also need ways to map their own farm level resources and be able to have some visibility on how much they can extract at what point and to what extent. And I think if we can enable them with some very, very logical solutions at the farm level, it will actually drive not only better efficiency on the farm, but also drive down the energy we spend on using agricultural water, the overall consumption of water at a state level, and also the overall climate resilience aspect of it. So I'll try to use certain examples here, just to make it easy. Example number one about making energy efficient technology available to them for accessing and applying it on their farm. So everyone has heard about sub-HP pumps, but we've been doing certain experiments, especially in the districts of Keonjhar and Mayurbhanj in Odisha. And what we've realized is that sub-HP solar pumps play a bigger role than the bigger traditional pumps, obviously because of the aquifer nature in those particular areas, but also because it offers them a very easy to use scenario. Like they can just basically pick up the pump, put it in a water body, pull out the water and irrigate their land. And the interesting part here is that because of this portability, it allows sharing of the asset. So what we've been able to demonstrate is also that small holders who have half an acre do not need to own the whole pump themselves. They can own it in groups of 2 and 3 farmers, and they can be sharing that asset and using it for irrigation. So it's not only application efficiency, but also ownership efficiency that we drive there. So we've done a bunch of work there. Happy to share more details after I step down. The second example that I want to share is on use of micro irrigation on the farms, which integrates with special additives on the soil, and how entrepreneurs and technologies have been created to hold more moisture in the soil and hence reduce the need of irrigation. So imagine if instead of 4 irrigation cycles or 5 irrigation cycles, if someone can reduce it to 3 irrigation cycles, imagine the amount of burden reduction on the public infrastructure. Imagine the number of canals and the public infrastructure that needs to be built. And we have one innovator who's worked out with the name of EF Polymer. What we've been able to create is a hydrogel based out of organic inputs that actually is able to retain moisture up to 100 times of what traditionally the soil would retain. So technologies like sub-HP pumps, technologies like soil additives, technologies like micro irrigation would drive the efficiency on the farm, and in turn allow us to make this transition for the eastern part of the country more efficient, more climate resilient. And I think we have this unique opportunity to learn from some of the mistakes of exploitation of water resources in the western part of our country and not repeat them, and maybe use innovation and entrepreneurship as a lever to learn from a lot of these mistakes, create better contextualized, community-centric solutions, and make this happen. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Mr. Himanshu, for your solutions and examples. So I request everyone who are in the audience to please be seated, and we will also be starting with the next session at 11:40, right just after this. So to quickly wrap up, I would request our chairman and co-chairman to please speak few words as a closing remark.
So, good morning, everybody. Anu Garg, Madam, Debashri, Madam, respected participants. My name is Archana Verma, as you would have already seen on the nameplate, and I have recently taken over as the mission director of the National Water Mission. So, I am amazed at the learning that one has got from this brilliant session and very brilliantly chaired by Anu Madam. What I want to say is that nature does not believe in silos. This is something which has made a very, very deep imprint on my mind. But still we treat water, which is a natural product, in a way that is silos in thinking. Like even today I noticed then when we are talking about this topic, which is decentralized solutions to water management, our whole focus is on the technological aspect of water management. Only Anu Madam, I think, and to a certain extent others, have talked about harnessing the potential of the communities. So basically, when we think of solution, we think of technology. Sometimes technology may or may not be a solution. It is the human capital. And I agree with Anandji that, you know, decentralized solution cannot be the panacea for all our water woes. It has to be integrated. But at the same time, if we don't develop the human capital to harness water and to revere water as an energy source which is limited and which may end, then all our technological solutions will come to a naught. So I completely believe when Anu ma'am starts with harnessing the potential of the community as the, and not as the only solution, because the topic is such that आनंद जी सब कोई बात कर रहे हैं, but ऐसा नहीं है कि बाकी topics discuss नहीं हुआ है. So topic is limited to decentralized solutions. So whenever we think of solution, please think of other solutions, the human capital. Second is that, you know, we cannot, water cannot exist in silos, and human beings also cannot exist in silos. Water is a very politically sensitive subject. And so, when we are thinking of any technology, when we are thinking of planning, we also have to give due weightage and due credence to the political thinking that is going on. Because, you know, there are many things which may be the best for that area, but may not be, you know, politically very, what should I say, बहुत palatable. So वो नहीं use होगा. तो वो भी एक चीज़ ध्यान में रखनी चाहिए when we think of decentralized solution. और जैसे कि एक पंचायत में जब एक पंचायत मीटिंग में मैं गई और सबने ये कहा, एक पंचायत मेंबर उठ के कहे कि आप लोग तो बहुत अमृत सरोवर कह रहे हैं, बस इतना आपका टारगेट ड्रिवन अप्रोच है, गड्ढे खोदे जा रहे हैं हमारे गांव में बिना हाइड्रोलॉजी स्टडी किए और पता नहीं क्या होने वाला है. कुछ दिनों के बाद आपके ये 75 के 75 जो हैं वो सारे मेरे गांव में तो या तो बाढ़ से बह जाएंगे, बंद हो जाएंगे, सिल्ट हो जाएगा. So there cannot be a one-stop, solution or a one-size-fit-all solution for water. वो भी, when we are thinking of solutions, we have to think about that. And at the end, I would just like to say that, I'm very happy to report that National Water Mission ka goal 4 is increase of water use efficiency by 20%. And thanks to Debashri ma'am, we have newly notified the Bureau of Water Use Efficiency, and we will be conducting, lots of research, discussions on water usage. क्योंकि ये बीट PMKSY, बीट JJM, पानी रहेगा तो जाएगा ना पाइप में. तो मेनली वाटर अवेलेबिलिटी और वाटर रिचार्ज भी एक बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट ये है, जो कि ऑफ कोर्स आज के टॉपिक का वो विषय नहीं था. लेकिन वी हैव टू ऑल्सो थिंक ऑफ, जैसे आनंद जी ने कहा कि एक्यूफर्स आर ड्राइंग अप. सो we are hoping कि Bureau of Energy Efficiency will, we'll be able to provide a lot of solutions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I now request our chairman, Ms. Anu Garg, to please say a few words.
So I'll only say thank you very much to all the panelists, my co-chair, and all participants. I think it was a very, very nice session. We had inputs from very diverse stakeholders, from academia, from various institutions, from private sector, from NGOs, and from state governments, central government. So I think we tried to give a very rounded kind of inputs to this vexed issue. And I'm glad that all of you were there. I'm just a little uncomfortable that we were not able to take any questions, but I think time is not going to allow. So with that, thank you very much to everyone.